lighting in here so bad. I was telling Dave earlier, I said, I can't see anything anymore in here. It's just too dark.
Yeah.
Old.
How old are you? Yeah, I was just
I am 40,
eyes.
almost 47. Yeah. It's bad. I finally had to get me a pair of glasses. Oh, I don't know where I even put them. See, I'm so old now I've lost my glasses.
I'm right there with you. I'm 48, so yeah.
Sheesh.
I've stopped fighting it.
Oh, it's brutal.
But don't you have contacts too, right, Lance?
Well, so what happened was my doctor, I told him, I said, I can't see far. And with hunting, I want to be able to see distance, so he bumped me up like a quarter. Now I can't see close very well. But I'm like, I'd still rather be able to see for hunting. So
Yeah.
I'll wear glasses when I need to.
Priorities.
So,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
I'm the lucky one that I've never needed anything.
Nothing, huh?
Yeah, but how old are you?
47 this next
Oh,
month.
wow. Jeez, yeah.
Hearing's my other thing. I can't hear anything. I can go with Dave hunting, and he's like, hear that turkey gobble? I'm like, nah. I said, I can't hear nothing. And one morning I was out hunting by myself, and I swear I could hear something faint. So I finally cupped my ear like this, and I could hear that turkey just like it was right there. I just have terrible hearing.
You got to get the old phone in your ear like they did back in the day, you know?
Yeah. I've thought about getting
Megaphone thing.
I've thought about getting a hearing aid, but I don't know. Look,
Dude.
Hey, man.
If you need it.
Right.
You know,
You do
that's
what
what
you
I
gotta
figure.
do.
If I can be out in the elk country and I can hear a bull a lot further away, why not?
Yeah.
I
Just
don't
turn
know.
it up. Right?
That'll be one of those technologies that they'll go after. You know, like with the trail cameras. You've been following the trail cameras.
I absolutely have, yeah. I've got some friends that use them pretty heavily, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I personally don't have too much of a preference other than I bought a trail camera like 4 days before they,
Of course.
you know, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
seriously?
Right, right.
It was even one of those transmitting ones, you know. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can sit back and, oh, look what showed up. Yeah.
honestly, I think that's the one thing that they probably should have just outlawed those. And because if you can't hike in, you got to hike in to check your cameras regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if that takes time and effort, so why not just outlaw the thing that you can sit in your house and be like, oh,
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting dilemma, right? Because in my opinion, and this is not my opinion, I need to clarify, I've liked this perspective and I've taken it, but I've listened to Steve Ranella talk about this, right? And his theory on this is it's just all about opportunity. So the more effective we become as hunters, right, then the more animals we kill, if we're doing game management properly, then you just have less opportunities to be out there in the field.
Yeah.
So do we want to keep going down that path and just having it be where we're more and more killers and we have less opportunity to get out and hunt, or do we want to, back off on the technology and have more opportunities, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I think it's a balance somewhere, right? And as long as it's legal, do your thing, but
Yeah.
there's definitely some discussions to be had about, technology and what that does,
Yeah.
One of the things when they had that meeting over here in Farmington, a few days ago, I didn't attend, but I played it back and just listening to one of the people that got up and talked. What it kind of made me think about was just how important killing, I think, has become to some of us as hunters. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media, Instagram. We want to get a bull, we want to get a big bull, we want to get whatever and post it and show it off. And we've made that such a huge priority that maybe we've forgotten the love of the hunt.
Yeah.
And I know that's happens to me all the time. If it takes me about 2-3 months after the hunt of not getting something to finally
be like,
come
Lick your
back down to
wounds.
earth, lick my wounds. And so I think there is some of that too. But
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
anyways,
Social media has changed the entire landscape for so many things. It's crazy.
it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed you got a lot of followers. I think it was like 60 some odd thousand followers. I was impressed.
Blows my mind. Blows my mind that many people even care. You know what I mean?
they just want to see your pictures. Show me some good.
Right.
And then they try to pick apart where you took those pictures to try to figure out.
Oh, that's a fact. That's
I know.
a fact. You would not believe how many DMs I've gotten over the years. Where did you take that photo of that bull? It's like,
Wow.
trust me, bud. You can't hunt him.
He's on private.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let me go ahead and introduce now that we've kind of jumped right into it. Today we're visiting with Jason Loftus. He's the owner of Untamed Images and a co-host of Wild and Exposed podcast. I learned about Jason through Instagram. was just started seeing a lot of your photographs. I think there was people like Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg, people like that were following you. I checked you out and really impressed with the images that you take, and then found out you're kind of a local guy like us, so you're close here in Utah, and so tracked you down and thought, hey, let's do a podcast with you and talk about wildlife photography. I learned that you've got your own podcast, so we can talk about that today. So anyways, welcome, Jason, and we appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity. You want to talk photography, elk, and hunting, hey, we could be here all night. So
that sounds really good. What, as a photographer, what's the one question that you get asked all the time?
Well, the one I get asked the most is generally, if I want to get into photography, what would you recommend?
Yeah.
And that's such a hard question to answer.
You probably got a DM.
Point.
You got a DM from me probably about a year ago on that one.
And here's the thing. I actually really do take a lot of pride in the fact that many people care about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to respond to every comment, which is probably getting to be too much sometimes. And because I'm really trying to find that balance between social media and what really matters, right? Mm-hmm. Life and family and all those other things and priorities. But I try to be responsive when people DM me and ask me questions too. And, people helped me out along my way, right? Mm-hmm. I was the guy DMing somebody else asking questions. Mm-hmm. I promise you I was. And so I try to be respectful of that and give people a meaningful and, a good answer and try to steer them in the right direction. But the reason that's such a hard question is because it really just depends. I mean, it's just a joke on our podcast, Wild and Exposed podcast, that people ask us a question and it kind of become it's a tagline now, like it depends.
Yeah.
And it does. I mean, it's hard because it does. It depends on so many things,
Mm-hmm.
So how much money do you have to spend?
Right.
How serious are you about this? Do you want to just get a beginner camera? Do you want to get a mirrorless, a DSLR? Do you want to get a zoom? Do you want to get a prime lens? I mean, are you going to do this all the time?
Yeah.
You're going to do this just once in a while?
Yeah.
And it's really a hard question to answer. And there's so much good gear out there too. I mean, you want Canon, you want Sony, you want Nikon. The sky's the limit. So, it's hard to answer that question for people.
When I sent you that, I did send you a DM, and I basically asked, what are some good videos, good places to go for learning? And I was actually surprised you immediately responded and gave me a list of things to go look at.
Right.
And I was impressed. And it's funny because I think all of us think we're like the one, right? And yet you've got 62,000 followers, and you took the time to respond to me. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. I try to be that guy. So.
No, but I think we would totally understand if you didn't respond. That'd be difficult to respond to everybody. Well, let's talk about photography just a little bit. What got you into it? I mean, how long ago? What got you into it?
Yeah, no, this is like the favorite story for me, and it's probably been told a bunch of times now. But for me, it started. My roots were in hunting. I'd tell the joke. I mean, not a joke. It's just the story that my dad used to drag me around in the elk woods when I was 3 years old, and I'm sure I was his little elk herd, and I'm sure he missed a lot of opportunities at elk because my noisy butt back there, causing grief and whatever. But I'm really grateful to him for that because he set that, that passion for the outdoors in hunting into me. And it picked up real quick on it in my life that hunting has really become a thing for me it's a way to get the best quality time I can with like my family, friends, and my kids and my dad and my brothers and, all those folks. And so yeah, that's kind of what got me started. As I got older, was out having all these crazy cool experiences, I just started to be like, man, I really want to take photos and capture some of this stuff. I mean, I'm seeing some amazing sunrises and sunsets. I'm seeing some animals do some crazy cool things. And, I started down the whole journey of a little pocket point and shoot, and I ain't cutting it, and then I wanted to try to take magazine quality photos. That was in my head, right? And so I went down this whole journey where because I did a little bit of guiding in the hunting side for a few years, and so I had good optics, Swarovski optics and some binos and stuff and spotting scope, and I even went down the whole digiscoping path. And hey, can I take magazine quality images with a spotting scope and digiscope setup, and learned pretty quick that not the kind of quality I was looking for. Mm-hmm. Great for videos, great for looking at animals, great for just fun, but not not what I was looking for. So I finally bought a DSLR, and you know, I learned pretty quick. I thought, well, finally I was able to afford a decent entry-level DSLR with a good lens. And now it's game on. I mean, I'm just going to be able to take photos like crazy, you know. And it took me one outing to figure out that that was wrong, you know. And there's a lot more to this whole photography game than having good gear, you know. So, but that's what started the passion, and then it just, you know, it just went from there. So.
Oh, nice. Do you still hunt?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What do you typically hunt?
For me, I mean, because I do spend so much time doing photography now, and that's really kind of kicked off. When I bought that camera, it was 2011, and I probably got serious about photography in 2016. You know, tried to like really get serious about it.
That's not that long ago.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's 6 years, I guess. Yeah. So, trying to, you know, divide my time in that between family and work and all those other good things, and hunting and photography. So I generally try to focus on some elk hunting and some waterfowl hunting when I can, and big game, deer and elk mainly. So mule deer and elk. I have been putting in for points in other states and doing that the whole thing, and I'm kind of frustrated with Wyoming right now and the direction they're headed with what they're, you know, their 90-10 split thing now. So that's a little bit of sour news for me, and I'm afraid what that means is they're also going to increase the price of those tags too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it gets to a point where if I have to spend $1,700-$1,800 on an elk tag, you know, I mean, it really is becoming a rich man's sport, you know, and it's kind of hard. I mean, some people will argue that, but I mean, you just look back and see. Yeah. It's hard to deny, you know, and it hurts. You know,
and they have those. Isn't it Wyoming has those premium tags now that you have to pay extra to, I guess, increase your odds.
Right, and if you want to pay premium now, what is that going to be? $3,000? You know, I mean, I don't know, but just it's crazy. So this next year coming up, I'm going to go back to my roots, and we're going to take the boys, and I've got an older boy and a younger boy who are both, you know, my youngest boy's 19, my oldest boy's 25, and we're going to go chase some elk around with our bows and in the over-the-counter stuff here in Utah.
Oh, nice.
And then him and my oldest boy and I should draw antelope tags in Wyoming this year. So
cool.
We should be able to draw a decent unit and go have some fun doing that. So that'll be the focus this year.
So if someone said you got to pick photography or hunting,
that's not fair. You know what? That used to be a hard question to answer. But I'll be honest with you now. I mean, it would probably be photography, and here's why: because I get to spend so much more time in the field with the animals than I ever do hunting.
Yeah.
And I get to witness so many crazy, cool things. I have been in the middle of rut fests like you wouldn't believe. And, you know, as a hunter, right, how many times do you get the opportunity to actually be in the middle of a rut fest with 6 herd bulls running 60 cows around and, like, just be there and experience it, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're in hunting mode, right, your mind is, I want to find an elk and kill it, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But that's the goal, right? Yep. So there's not a lot of time you get to spend in the close quarters with animals in that mindset. And so for me, I think it would be that. Now, the caveat is I love wild game meat, and elk's by far the best.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm always dying to figure out a way to put some elk meat in my freezer, and I'm a meat hunter first and foremost, and I've been fortunate. I've killed a few elk in my life and got lucky and drew a limited entry tag in 2011, and, you know, was able to connect on a pretty nice bull, and I feel pretty fortunate. I've killed some public land bull, you know, one, you know, raghorn public land bull, and some other, you know, cows and spikes and stuff along the way.
Yeah.
But for me, you know, it's all about the meat, and I just love having that you know, clean, antibiotic-free, hormone-free protein in my freezer, you know. So it doesn't get much better than be able to go to the freezer and pull out a backstrap that you killed and cleaned and cut up and packaged and you know, throw it on the grill. So yeah.
Well, you know, we were talking earlier about the Utah game camera regulations and how they changed.
Right.
And one of the things that's, I guess, the most disappointing part about that is the videos that I was able to obtain last year on my limited entry elk hunt. I've never had cameras before myself, but I put up a camera last year and I put them on some wallows, and the interaction that I was able to capture between the elk and the rutting and all that was so cool. That was absolutely my favorite part about the hunt, was coming back and looking at and watching my videos.
Right.
It was just amazing, and hear the bugling and everything else. And so I can totally understand the photography side of it, and almost saying that would be my favorite part of it, because you get to see that interaction. And I had a lot of interactions last year too that, man, I like to talk about rut fest. I was in the middle of a rut fest and I was trying to shoot something, but I really wish I could have had that all recorded. That would have meant a lot. And so I honestly can see myself, and I've actually said it for years, that I'm going to, change in my hunting gear for some camera equipment, just because I do love that part of it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Well, now that we know that we're all local, right? I mean, let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
I'd love to go shoot with you. So
That'd be awesome.
yeah, let's do it.
That'd be awesome. I do have a question around that, but I'll ask it later when we get to your podcast. It's about the workshops that I've seen on there, so I'll ask you about that.
Yeah, sure.
So is elk kind of your favorite animal? Is that,
Yeah.
if you had to choose one?
Yeah, if I had to choose one, and I think it's just because they're so vocal, and just the body language, and as a photographer, you're always looking for that unique body language and positioning, and elk are their body language is incredible. Plus the vocalizations, it's hard to beat that and it's all the combination, right? It's the fall, it's the cold crisp air, it's the frost in the morning, it's it's all of it together. Just, man, it gives me chills talking about it. That's crazy. I mean, it really is. It's a problem. I have an addiction.
What's the hardest animal to actually capture? Maybe, I don't know if birds play into this, but maybe we won't worry about birds.
Well, it's funny. I've gotten into all kinds of critters. I think ungulates are probably my focus. But I don't have a problem at all with the predators. Coyotes, fox have eluded me, or not fox. Foxes are amazing. They're again, like when you're spending time with these animals in a different mindset, than maybe hunting or something like that, right? You just get to see a whole different aspect of their behaviors and what they do, and so you get a different appreciation for them, I think. But even the wolves, I'm an elk hunter, and I'm a guy, unlike some others, that thinks that they do belong. I think that they're here for a reason, and they serve a purpose. They need to be managed just like any other animal, and so that's my take on it, right? For whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
But I know others that would say, get rid of them all,
kill them all.
Yeah, exactly, right. Yeah. And so I don't know that I agree with that. I can understand and respect their perspective on it, but anyways, no, I think. It's for me, the hardest animal to photograph to this point has been a wolf. And I've spent quite a bit of time in Yellowstone and other places where the wolves are at. But they're a difficult animal they're just shy generally. Mm-hmm. They don't like people. Even the ones that are in the park that are quote unquote habituated, some tend to keep their distance from people and that. And to get, I've seen plenty of them, seen tons actually, because I spent enough time. But to get within photography range of a wolf, you got to be in that, especially depending on the conditions. But you got to be in that, 30 to 40 yard range to really get a good photo. And people don't understand that. They think because you're carrying around this great big lens that, it's 200 yards out there, and you're just probably getting all these amazing images. And it's like, nah.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up, because on your Instagram post, usually, I don't know if you always do it, but you put a picture, and then if you scroll across, you'll say, like what camera lens you were using and some of the, way it was set up.
Yep, the metadata. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of the times it's a 600 millimeter, lens, if you will.
Yep.
And I've tried to understand what that means. And what I read was if you divide that number by 50, that would tell you that's like a 12 times magnification. So I guess what I'm wondering is, how close are you really getting to these animals? Because like when you post those pictures, it looks like you're right there. So give us a feel for how close you're getting to an animal when you take these pictures.
Right. No, that's a great question, and I get that asked quite a bit. And there's sometimes when it's, when other photographers sometimes see that data, I'll get some comments like, "Whoa, 177 millimeters on a moose. Oof. We're pretty close," And it's like, so that some of these guys have and gals have a feel for what that means, right? But I always try to abide by the rules of wherever I'm at. If I'm in the wild, then there are no rules, right? The rules are don't be dumb and don't be stupid.
Right.
And I always try to respect the animals when I'm in the field, even if I'm in the wild, quote unquote, out of a park and don't have to abide by park rules necessarily. I always try to not interrupt the critter's behavior. So if they know I'm there and they're nervous, then I've caused I've created a situation that's not good.
Okay.
So that's the approach I take. I just want to make that clear. But most of the time, honestly, even with the 600 millimeter lens, shooting elk, for example, I probably need to get a full frame elk image, I probably still need to be 50, 60 yards. So I'm not looking to be super close in most situations. And that's why most photographers, they get a bad rap. But I really think what it is you buy that equipment so you can respect the distance, and you can stay away and, still make those images. But so the closest, I think, I've been pretty close to some elk, and I've been really close to quite a few animals, but almost always on their terms. In fact, I've admitted this in other podcasts, but I've had some run-ins with elk, more elk than not, and I think it's just because I spend so much time with elk. But I've been chased, I don't know, 5-6 times by bulls.
Have you really?
Yeah, and it's a little, it'll
Yeah,
get the adrenaline going. Yeah,
a little pucker fest.
Right. Most of the time they're just telling you, they're speaking to you, right? They're telling you you're in my zone and I don't want you around, and so you respect that. But sometimes you try to read body language, and I feel like it's funny. We talk about this on the other podcast, but on the Wild and Exposed podcast, but a lot of us like to think we're experts, with wildlife. Mm-hmm. And I've spent a lot of time through my entire life with animals and out in the field and hunting and all that stuff. And I like to think that I know what's going on, but they're still wild animals.
Yeah.
And just when you think you have them figured out, and you guys know this from a hunting standpoint, right?
Yep.
Just when you think you have them figured out, they will totally change it for you.
Yep.
So I've been fortunate, never had any injuries or had anything crazy, but because I always try to make sure I'm in a situation where I can get around a tree or something. But yeah, I've been a few bulls have told me I'm not liked.
Do you have to basically go into it with almost like a hunter's mentality? I mean, you got a camo up. I mean, you got to be cautious in that sense in order to not spook the animal. You got to check the wind. I mean, those kinds of things.
Well, not so much with a lot of the dirty secret is kind of a lot of the photography you see out there is park animals. Mm-hmm. And we joke the only reason you need to wear camo is to hide from the rangers, but that's a joke. It's a joke.
It's not real.
But no, you really don't need to. I mean, a lot of us do just because the ones that are hunters / photographers, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of the folks that I hang out with, that I photograph with, are of that that same mindset.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's the clothing we have, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a good, effective clothing, and it serves a purpose, and it's not just for hunting. It's just that it's good clothing. So no, not so much. I would say you could get away with a lot. Now, I think the more critical piece of photographing wildlife is understanding their behavior and approaching them in a way that doesn't make them nervous. Because you still, even with park animals, you still will get animals that are very wild. They'll come into the park during the rut. Mm-hmm. They're not there the rest of the time, so they're super skittish.
Yeah.
Just as an example. Or if you go charging in on any animal, they're going to, whoa, what are you doing? And they're going to be gone, Mm-hmm. So a lot of it's just understanding that the way you should approach them, and I mean, it sounds dumb, but walking a few steps and just kind of acting like you're not paying attention and not making eye contact and letting them know that you're there, but you're not a threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've had some incredible experiences with wild sheep and other animals that, I mean, I've had a ewe come and sit down right behind me, touching my leg. It's just like, whoa, man. And you've been accepted, when that's the case.
You've been up there too long.
Right, yeah. Right. Maybe it's telling me I need to leave,
Take a shower.
Right. But yeah, so I mean, that to me is, that's the joy and the beauty of all this is when you kind of learn these things, it's incredible as far as, the experiences you can have,
Yeah.
Dang.
When it comes to like planning, so like whether you're going to a park or wherever you're going, I'm curious how much like planning goes into things. So I was watching a documentary on humpback whales, mm-hmm. and it was James Cameron was the one that directed it, and he was talking about how it was like this 1-year planning event. They spent 3 weeks out there trying to capture these humpback whales. But how much like effort really goes into planning when you go out to shoot an animal like that, or photograph?
Good. That's a really good question. For me, what you're talking about there is absolutely that kind of planning for something like a Nat Geo or Discovery Channel or BBC Wild type of video shoot.
Yep.
There's year if not years of planning.
Coordinating and everything else.
Right.
I got to get me a boat.
Right. I mean, and you got to figure out how am I going to do all this and the equipment and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So, but I've Mike Morrow and Ron Hayes on the podcast. They both are doing videography work for those guys, and they'll be on assignment, knowing about it for months in advance, and then on the assignment and getting ready for it, and then they'll be on the assignment for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks or more, depending on what's going on, and so that's a whole other ball game. For me and photography side, it really is just kind of like, hey, it's fall. I know that third week in September is pretty much going to give me prime time, plus or minus. So I'm going to try to spend 9 to 10 days in the field during that third week, last part of the September. I got to decide where I'm going to go. I don't generally decide where I'm going to go until I kind of get a feel for what animals are showing up where and what they're looking like, and did this bull make it, and things like that, and then just kind of make a plan and decide where to go based on some of those things. And then it's just really it's not, there's some planning, but it's nothing like you're talking about it with that.
But. You kind of maybe jump a little bit to your Wild and Exposed podcast, but I was listening to one of them, and it was titled "Morning Magic in the Woods, There Be Dragons." And the guy you had on there, your guest, was Kelly Elmer.
Yep.
And he said that he learned more about wildlife behavior in 4 to 5 years of serious wildlife photography than he did in like 40 years of hunting.
Yep.
Like, what have you gained? What has photography provided for you that's aided you, I guess, in hunting? I mean, what are those kinds of things you've just gathered or learned that have been helpful?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I totally agree with him. By the way, he's a hunting machine. That guy.
Oh, is he?
Oh okay. Yeah. Kelly's he gets after it. But I think it's just a matter of being around him so much in so many different times of the year. You get to just see so much more of their body language and their behaviors. And, the fact that I had no idea that cows bugled until I saw it and witnessed it. And last year got to see it like 4 times from different cows, which I'd never,
cool.
It's just crazy, right? And I actually tried to get it on video and just missed it a couple different times. I was like, dang it, man. But I'm talking like not without the chuckle, but full on bugle.
Full on.
I mean, if you wouldn't have turned and seen it was a cow, you'd have thought it was a young bull.
That's awesome.
So, and just, having experiences like that and seeing the dynamics of herd behavior and their, what they're doing and their timing with things and where they like to spend time and what they're eating at different times of years and at the different time of the year, and all those things just kind of, we talk about it from a photography standpoint, but it just kind of, it's applicable for hunting too. It just builds that database, in your head. And when you're out hunting and you have those experiences, it's the same thing, it's just, you just get a lot less time in those scenarios when you're hunting. And, you're limited to what? I mean, if you're a bow hunter, you're lucky you get a month of hunting a year. And when you're actually in elk and witnessing behavior, from my experience, hunting is a small portion of that time. You know what I mean?
Like
so
a week.
Right, yeah. If you're lucky, in that month, and most guys that are out there hunting that are like us, the average Joes, they're lucky if they can go throw 3 or 4 weekends in during that time and maybe take a couple days off. Somebody that is really dedicated will commit a week or whatever they can, right? But the reality is just because hunting season's a month long doesn't mean that everybody's spending a month in the field,
Right.
So I think that's the big difference, and I think that's what's helped educate me. And I don't know if it's made me a better hunter, to be honest with you, because the bottom line of all of that is then when you go out in the elk woods during hunting season, it's a whole different ballgame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you're spending time around hunted animals, they're a different animal, and it's just the reality of it. So I'd say that it is an education for sure. Now, whether or not it's made me a better hunter, I'll say this: the meat in the freezer doesn't prove that to be the case. So.
That's funny. maybe stay on topic a little bit about photography. I know it's one of those things that's really hard, but to say, where should I start? But do you have advice for people that just kind of like want to get into it? I know it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, if I'm someone who's got plenty of money, you're probably going to say, well, you go buy this and this and this, and you're good to go. But for the average Joe,
let's say we had $500 to spend.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if a person doesn't have a lot of money to spend, you basically say, hey, buy something that you can afford,
right,
and try it. Get out and start doing it. I mean, what's kind of your advice?
Yeah, I mean, what I generally try to tell people in a nice way is, again, it depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I really try to get a feel for how much money, what's your budget,
Yeah.
And I just try to get a feel for how serious are you think you're going to be about this, right? If it's just going to be a hobby for you and you just want to do it once in a while and you want to have a nice camera to take some pretty pictures every now and then I'd probably just get, anywhere from a $500 to $1,000 camera that, you don't have to worry about lenses detaching and all that stuff. It's got the built-in zoom. There's some really nice cameras out there that take really good photos.
Yeah.
And that you can even shoot in manual mode, in a lot of those cases. And I would, recommend that they go now. Then the challenge is, right. It's like, well, there's probably 3 or 4 cameras in that range by different manufacturers that would work. So now it's a question of, and then they want to know, well, what brand would you recommend? Well, that's the that's the Ford, Dodge, Chevy debate.
Right.
It's like, I can't answer that for you. I can tell you what I like and why, and if that helps you, great. But all of those camera systems take great photos. We're at a point where technology is so far advanced with this stuff that you really can't go wrong. Now, are there minute differences that make one a little better than other when you're talking that pro level and you're talking the nitty gritties and pixel peep and things like that? Maybe, but it's very subjective. So
it's funny. My daughter, she's taken a photography class in high school. And she likes to do photography. She's actually done some on the side to make a little money, and she uses this older Nikon of ours, and here I've got this one that's here. I've got this new Alpha, A6600 from Sony.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, you need to use this. She's like, no, I like the way my camera takes pictures, and she'll try it with mine, and she keeps going back to hers, and I'm just like frustrated, right? Because I just spent all this money on this camera, and I'm like, no, don't you understand? This is the new one,
right?
But she's right. The pictures that she gets out of her Nikon is what she wants. She likes that look of them, and so
that's a great point. You just hit the nail on the head, and it really does come down to personal preference and style. And another thing I try to tell people is you get a lot of people to think, I got $10,000 as well. You get the other extreme, right? And what should I buy? And it's like, well, people need to remember you can make really good images with very beginner level equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It's very doable. Now, does it limit you some? Yes. Are the sensors not as good? Yes. Can you not get as low a light situations? Yes. I mean, there's limitations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what you get when you start climbing the rank of pro bodies versus beginner level type gear.
Mm-hmm.
Is really just those. You can go to a whole nother level with low light sensitivity and some of those things, and shutter speeds, and all those, the sensors are better, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, there's nothing. If you can't, I've got to be careful. I'm not picking on anybody, but you've got to be able to. If you can't take a photo with a D3500 and a 70-300 lens, then you're probably not going to be able to take a photo with an R5 with a 1-500, or a prime. And it's just the reality of it. There is more to photography than just having expensive equipment.
Yeah, there's an art. So, it's an art form, honestly.
It really is. And editing is the other side of it, right? That has a whole other level of art form.
Yep.
And you've seen that a lot lately. People's images have really stepped up, and I think a lot of it has to do with the stuff that Photoshop and the software programs are putting out there and making it so much easier to edit photos now.
Mm-hmm.
Things that guys like us used to do to set ourselves apart with our images are now a click of a button in a lot of these software programs.
Right.
And it's it's kind of like, dang, man, okay, well, how do I separate myself now? And it's just part of the game. It's fun, it's challenging, it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It's all part of the way it is. But yeah, no, I would say, whatever money you have, you just got to set your boundaries. Got to understand how serious you are about it, And then what you need to do is go to a camera shop, and I would just recommend going to a camera shop, not like Best Buy, but try to find, if you can, a local camera shop. Like here in Salt Lake City, there's Picture Line in Salt Lake. There's, down in Texas, they're a sponsor of the podcast and our Wild and Exposed podcast, Precision Camera. But those camera shops have people that can say, what's your budget? Here's your options. And then you can like pick them up and play with them and see them.
Yeah.
And, then you can go and check some reviews on them and things like that. And that's going to be your best bet on how to make a decision.
And I think from personal experience, my wife, she really wanted a nice camera. We spent, I don't know, I think with the camera and the one lens, we probably spent like $3,000 several years ago. But all she wants to do is turn it on and auto push the button.
Yep.
So this camera's got all these features, right, that never would get used. And so I think people got to think about, how much do you want to put into this? How much effort? How much do you want to learn? Because I don't know. I see photographers, I kind of put them on this pedestal. Like, it's kind of like this. They're mysterious in a way because they got this incredible talent that so many people don't have. But I believe it's because they're willing to put the time and effort into learning their camera, going out and practicing. When I bought that Alpha 6600, I read through that manual a couple times because I was like,
You did what?
Yeah, it was crazy, right?
You read the manual?
That's what he is. That's how he is.
And I think most people would probably just...
This is light reading at bedtime.
I think, you got to be willing to put in the time if you want to be a good photographer. And,
Agreed.
Agreed. And is that kind of how you see it? And how long did it take you to finally, I guess, get to the point where you felt like you were professional?
Right. It's funny. And I don't know, I asked myself that question a lot. Like, when I first started, it was like, oh man, when can I call myself a professional, right? And it's funny, the more experience I get in that, it's like, I don't know, I'm not there. I really don't think I am, and I think it's just because, it's all about how you define professional, right? If you make some money from what you're doing, is that where you draw the line? Some people draw the line saying if you're not making your living doing it, then you're not a professional, right? So I don't know, it's subjective too, but. I guess my point is just that I feel like I'm always learning, and I think that's the mindset you have to have. Going into this, it's all about maintaining some humility, and accepting that you don't know everything, so that you can continue to learn. And I learn from my friends and other folks that YouTube. I'm learning from all that stuff constantly, and I think if I ever felt like I arrived, then I probably would hang it up. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Then I think that's why I'll always be an elk hunter, because I'll never master that.
Yeah. I think it was you that took a picture of a landscape and put it on Instagram, and you said something about you would like to learn how to take landscape photos better or something.
That was the last one I posted, yeah.
Were you serious about that?
Absolutely.
Because when you posted that, I thought, whatever, you can take pictures of anything, but I do understand that because I remember Kirk Hammett from Metallica. He said one day he would like to learn how to play, and I can't remember what type of music it was. I thought, you're Kirk Hammett, you could play anything, but I think, I guess it depends. So
right.
Tell us about.
So can I take a landscape photo? Sure, right.
Yeah.
I can point my photo, or I can point my camera at something I've seen somebody else point their camera at, and take a photo and edit it. But really understanding how to do landscape photography at the level that the big dogs are doing it is a whole nother thing. It's a whole nother level, and it's all about understanding focal plane and focus stacking and bracketing and all these things that you can do with your camera, and to be able to create the real image that you want. So what a lot of people don't understand with landscape photography, a lot of folks will do what they call focus stacking and bracketing, where they can take a photo at different exposures, and then they also take a photo at different focal planes, and they take all those images and post and combine them all, so they get more data and they have better control of all the shadows and highlights and focal depth and everything, right?
Wow.
So yeah, with software you can do so much anymore, right? And then there's the whole editing side of landscape. Where do you understanding light in a way that it looks natural. And not just natural, but making it very dramatic, and some people nowadays, it's super easy to replace your skies, I'm more of a purist that way, as far as I want to just kind of keep it whatever it was. That's a challenge, right? You got to be in that spot in that time when the skies are doing something cool, and then it becomes something unique.
Yeah.
If I just replace the sky, I mean, anybody can do that.
Yeah.
So, it's just all those little nuanced things. And I recently started 2 years ago chasing lizards around with my camera, and I never thought in a million years I'd care to try to go out in the desert in early spring and late spring actually, and fight biting gnats and crawl on the ground and get poked with cactus trying to take a photo of a lizard. And I it's fun. And there's a whole set of issues along with that you got to learn, And
Interesting.
so, yeah, I think it's just, and that's what's fun about photography is, I guess my point is, whatever genre you kind of get into, there's just so much to learn to perfect it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not that I'll ever perfect any of it, but to try to perfect it, I guess, and just get to that next level, So I'll probably go back and hopefully take another photo in that same spot in another couple years after I've learned some more and go, okay, yeah, there it is, or that's better, and who knows, right? But so yes, I was being sincere. I was not being flippant or, trying to be funny or anything. I really meant it when I said, man, I really would like to learn how to do landscape
awesome.
better. You know what I mean?
Cool.
So, yeah.
That is really cool. Man, I got so many different avenues I could go down, so many questions I could ask when it comes to photography. But let's jump over. I want to talk about the podcast. Okay. So you have this podcast. I guess you're a co-host of Wild and Exposed podcast. Mm-hmm. How did that come about?
Yeah, I was a guest on there. I got fortunate enough to, let me back up. I got fortunate enough to meet Michael Morrow and Ron Hayes, who are the other. Michael is he's the producer, the backer, if you will, of the whole thing. He started the whole thing.
Okay.
Under his production company, Truth and Legend Productions.
Okay.
So he has another couple of podcasts that he works with other folks on as well. But he also wanted to do one in the photography realm. And him and Mark Raycroft and Ron Hayes started the podcast. And I think they went for a couple years. But I got lucky to meet Ron and Mike in the park one day out photographing with my son. And they were just one of those things where it's like random, like, hey, you want to do a podcast? I was like, yeah, sure, let's sit down and talk, So we sat down. We were doing elk at the time, so we sat down in the middle of the day and chatted about elk photography and, just my journey and all that kind of good stuff. And, had some fun and I kind of stayed in touch with them. And then, over long story short, the more time kind of went on and Mark decided to kind of step away for other things because he had other priorities and that with his side of photography and what he was doing. And they had a spot open. They wanted to they liked that 3 to kind of help with somebody couldn't be on and things like that because trying to do one a week is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So they offered me the opportunity to be a co-host and be a part of the team in that, and I was like, wow, I was honored, surprised and honored to be a part of it. And, it's been fun. I think we're going on, that I've been a part of it, going on, about a year and a half, 2 years.
I think I saw the first podcast was like 2018. Does that sound about right?
Right. Yeah, we are. Yeah, probably early. We're in our 5th season, I guess, is what you'd call it, of doing the podcast. So we're 3 months in to our 5th season of doing it, and I've been doing it now for I guess almost 2 years. So yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, I was impressed with how many you guys have cranked out in a short amount of time, especially now knowing, as we were talking earlier, you got a full-time job, you got to do these kind of things. And Dave and I, we've set a goal to try to do one every 2 weeks or, twice a month. And sometimes that's hard. I mean,
sometimes it gets skipped.
Someone gets sick, someone goes on vacation, whatever.
Right,
and I can see where you almost need that third person. Dave and I were going to do a podcast recently, and then you got sick.
Yeah.
And I says, well, I better press.
I'm good. I'm just going to do it.
Because it's going to be a month and a half before we get together if I don't. So,
right.
On that podcast I was talking about earlier, was it Kelly? Did I get it? Yeah, Kelly Elmer.
Kelly, yep.
What was funny, you're going to have to tell me what this was. I'm listening to the podcast, and all of a sudden I hear an elk bugle. And I'm like, and I hear another, and I hear another. I can hear elk in the background also in your podcast, and I think you guys said you were in a truck and you were off doing some photography. I don't know if you were doing the podcast in a vehicle, but I kept hearing elk, and I'm like, are these guys surrounded by elk, or what is this?
And you're like, what are they doing talking about it?
Yeah, what are they talking about? They should be out there. What was that?
Right. So we actually do a YouTube channel as well, and all of our episodes we record and put them out on YouTube.
Okay.
But this one was a little different because we did it in the car as we were driving home from shooting elk, and we had just had that experience. So I actually used the same recorder, and while we were driving home, we had that conversation. So then when we got home, Mike was all excited about it and said, hey, you guys need to send me some video clips and some photos, so I can put something together. So then if you go out to the YouTube channel, you can actually see a lot of the video clips and the photos that we were taking from that experience. So what you're hearing in the background is the audio that he put in from some of the video clips and stuff that just carried over. So, yeah.
It was funny because they were really faint, and then all of a sudden one was real loud. I'm like, okay, something, because I was like, this one in the truck?
Right.
Some guy in the back seat with his bugle tube.
Right. That's some great ambiance, right?
That was pretty funny.
They're just playing it in the radio in the
Yeah.
background.
Right.
Just getting in the zone.
On your guys' website, the Wild and Exposed website, you have a place called Workshops. Tell us about these workshops that are on there offered.
Yeah, so we've decided to kind of start going down that path. We've wanted to do it for a while, but we've decided to just go down that path, and I think we're kind of approaching it as a team, and as individuals too, under the Wild and Exposed umbrella, if you will. But we get asked a lot for people that want to come out and shoot with us and stuff, and it's hard. You're always trying to balance your time, personal life, like we mentioned, right? It's hard to do photography, hunting, church callings, family commitments, and be a dad and a husband and a meaningful dad and husband and brother, and on and on and on, right? Yeah. We have a million things coming at us, and then try to say, hey, there's this person I don't know at all that wants my time, and it's hard. So that being said, this is an opportunity for us to try to do some of that and to get, kind of have an opportunity to shoot with and make it worth our time, if you will, to go out and spend time in the field with folks that want to spend time photographing with us.
I noticed some of the workshops, a lot of them look like Alaskan, out on a boat, several days, that kind of thing. So they're going to be a little more pricey, right?
Some of them are, but we're working on some other ones that would be a little bit more, affordable, down to earth.
Okay. Because I'm asking for a friend, me.
Hint.
Right. No, it's a good question, and then I think you could the gamut. We're just starting on this whole journey, but there's anything from sage grouse. Ron does sage grouse workshops every year, and it's just starting that season right now. It just all depends on what you want to photograph and where you want to go, right? But the bear trips, there's 2 that are being offered this year. I'm actually going to Alaska. Sorry, I'm going to Africa this year.
Wow.
That's one of the ones that's up on there. There's 2 spots left for that. And that's a trip that we put together with a friend of ours that we're going over. And kind of, this could become a yearly thing. But obviously the Africa thing's a little more cost prohibitive, but that's a bucket list one for me, and taking my wife and my son too. He graduates this year, my youngest. So nice. That's kind of his senior trip, and it should be fun.
Cool. I think Jason's trying to make a point when he said there's 2 spots, Dave.
There's 2 spots left.
Africa.
Don't you think your company needs a write-off, Dave, somehow to go down there and do some surveying?
Yeah, maybe. I try to stay in the States.
Yeah. So, but we're also working on some like Yellowstone and Tetons and Antelope Island, wild horses. Who knows what'll come from this, right? But we're going to try to do more of that kind of stuff and do some 2-3 day workshops that are more local and affordable for folks. Because I get it, man. It's like everybody would love to do all those things, and time and money are always the issues. So
you must be a busy guy. I mean, all the things you rattled off and having I assumed photography was your day job,
right?
Right. And based on everything I've seen, so yeah, you must be a really busy guy. That's for sure.
My niece, she does wedding photography, and she does those workshops.
Oh yeah.
And people, because they want to look like her photos.
Right.
And so she's like, okay, you do this, and this is what it looks like. You know? And so I think those workshops are just an awesome opportunity to learn from somebody like yourself.
Right. Yeah.
That has gone through and figured out, put your f-stop here, put your this, put this, and your picture will look like this.
Right. And I'll just add, that's a great point. And I'll just add that I think what the key with these workshops is really, I think it's an opportunity to get you to see how we think and approach things, right? Mm-hmm. It's because anybody, that spends some time on YouTube and understands the pyramid for photography. You know, you got 3 things you can adjust to get your exposure right. And once you kind of understand that, you can skin that cat a lot of ways, you know. Yeah. So how do we think about it and why? And I think that's, you know, that's the key to that. That's why her images look the way they do. And if you do things a certain way, then you will get a certain look. And that's another thing that people don't necessarily understand. You overexpose a little, you underexpose a little. Based on the circumstances, that might vary. Am I trying to get some motion blur? What's my shutter speed be to do that? You know, all those little. Am I trying to freeze that motion? What's my aperture at? What am I trying to accomplish and why? You know, those are the kind of things that come with experience and the time in the field. Yeah. And you know, that's some of the art behind it. I think so.
Man, I think that's why people they're willing to pay for that. I mean, that's why they want to go on that workshop, because they want to fast forward through 20 years of experience of taking photography into a 2-day experience.
Right. And you can shortcut a lot of that stuff through that kind of a process too, for sure. Yeah. But it also kind of setting that expectation, right? It's like, well,
come out of it. Oh, I'm going to be just like Jason.
Well, no. I don't mean that. But yeah. No. That's not what I meant. But
that's what people sometimes might think, though.
Right. But hopefully they'll come out of there taking better photos. But yeah, no. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like they got to have that reality check that there's more to it than just that too. You know, I mean, that's and you see that a lot. And what's crazy nowadays with the technology, with the mirrorless cameras, it almost is like your wife wants to just pick it up and take the photo. With mirrorless, I mean, it's getting really close to being that. Yeah. You know, and so, you know, that's shortcutting the whole learning curve even more.
I've experienced that where I've tried to, you know, put it in manual mode and change all these settings and think, okay, I got this set just right, and take a picture. Not real pleased. I put it in auto and I take a picture and it's better. I'm like, well, okay, what does this say about me, you know?
Just leave it on auto, Lance.
Yeah, because all the professionals say you got to, you know, learn how to put it in manual and adjust things. And then when you can't do that and you do something better in auto, it's like, man, I'm worthless. What's wrong with me?
Just make sure you take a raw photo. Let me see.
Right. That's another good point. Always shooting raw.
Yeah. Do you? I assume that's what professionals do, is always shoot in raw, so they can manipulate it more, I guess, in post processing. Is that the idea behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably I would say most professionals do. There might be some scenarios where you might have some pro sports photographers. It's crazy how that works nowadays. Like, you'll literally, these cameras now with the Bluetooth technology and everything, they can be taking photos in a game, for example, and literally those photos are dumping off the camera onto their iPad, going through some basic editing automatically and sending to editors as they're being taken. That's awesome. So those guys might be doing JPEGs. I'm not 100% sure, you know, but yeah, I mean, it's a real competitive market out there and for those guys. So, but yes, to answer your question, the point of that is, yes, you should shoot in RAW, and the reason is because that's what gives you the most data to work with. And if you ever played with a RAW photo versus a JPEG photo in post, you'll understand that you have less shadows to work with, less color to work with, less everything, because the camera is compressing that file to a JPEG, and the only way to do that is remove data.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, if you want to have the most artistic ability with your photos, you really need to shoot in RAW. And then that's back to the point, just to kind of, with the manual, the reason that matters is because in a lot of scenarios anymore, auto probably would get it pretty right. Yeah. They're getting really good with that. However, if I'm shooting bison in snow, it doesn't understand how to expose that. It just can't.
Yeah.
If I'm shooting, you know, there's a lot of scenarios, right? If I'm trying to shoot a waterfall and I want to get that silky water effect, auto's not going to do it for you, right? So you've got to to have the most artistic ability with your camera, you've got to understand the three legs of the pyramid and what they're doing for you when you're trying to accomplish different things. So that's where the value comes in, right?
What do you use for your post-processing? What software do you prefer, Photoshop, or is it?
Lightroom is what I use probably with. I probably put every photo I take through Lightroom, and then do most of my editing there, and then I do use Photoshop for some basic stuff, and on almost every photo. But real basic stuff, you know. Okay. I mentioned I'm a purist earlier, but there's also, that's kind of lying. I am a purist for the most part. I I try to reflect reality of what I saw in my images. I really do.
Yeah.
But there's times when it's like, there's people that are more photojournalistic, and they will. It's just got to be exactly what you took. Very little manipulation. But you have to manipulate a raw photo. A raw photo does not have any color when it comes out. It does not. I mean, it's just blah. And the reason for that is because all that data is there, right? And you've got to do some tweaking to it to get it where it needs to be. So you always are doing some tweaking to the image. But my point is photojournalistic style would be if there's a twig going across the face of the animal, that you don't take that out, right? Well, for me, if there's something that's annoying or not really a key part of the photo, I don't have a problem with fixing those kinds of things and taking them out in post. So especially if it's something that's annoying or something, right? So everybody has their personal boundaries, right, of what that means to them. But at the end of the day, it's art. And I'm not calling it photojournalism. I'm calling it photography, So I think that's the key. And to me, it's all about being real about it. You'll have people that put stuff out there that are obviously composite images, and but they won't say it is.
Yeah.
And that to me it's kind of like, well, come on, man, you're putting something out there that's not real.
Yeah.
And so hopefully people pick up on that with different photographers. And when you're looking at my work, you can know that that's what I saw. I might crank the color a little bit. I might take a stick out, but that was the circumstances and that was the photo.
That's
what you're looking at is what I saw,
That's
right?
Impressive.
As much as possible.
It's like when I took a picture of the road washed out. It was a dirt road. It was washed out last year. And then it was with my phone. And I used one of the editing filters or whatever.
Yeah.
And I hit one of the filters and it looked really cool. I'm like, I'm going with it.
Perfect. Yeah.
It looks good.
The contrast was just right.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. So we just got back from it. I took my family on a trip to Hawaii, and of course, there's all sorts of photos you want to take pictures of.
Right.
So I've got my camera, my 6600, down on the beach, sunset photos. And I was so frustrated because I could pull out my phone and take a better looking sunset with my phone than I could with this high quality camera. And I'm sure there's a lot of processing that's going on in that phone that's doing this, but still it was frustrating to me. So I eventually put away the camera and I just started using my phone.
Right. And you hauled it all the way over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny. We talk about that. I mean, the technology with these phone cameras it's insane. It's gone. And it's kind of crazy, but that's where a lot of these companies now are focusing their technology development is on those camera phones, or phone cameras. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Big money makers, I guess.
I mean, do you think about it? There's how many cell phones do they sell?
Yep.
Millions.
Billions, right?
Yep.
So
and every year there's a new one out there that
Right,
everybody
right.
wants.
So how many DSLRs or mirrorless cameras are they selling? So I mean, it's a numbers game, obviously, and unfortunately, there's still companies that are still committed to developing technology on that side, but a lot of that is being put into cell phone technology and that.
Yeah.
But it's doing a lot of that stuff. It knows that the average Joe is just going to pick up their phone and go click.
Yeah.
So it's doing a lot of that auto stuff in the phone real time right there.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Well, and to your point earlier, when I'm taking pictures with this Sony camera, it's taking a picture and it's showing me really what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I do it a lot of time with my phone, it's adjusting it, and enhancing it, if you will. But the camera is actually giving me more of what I'm actually seeing.
Really?
Right. So. That's a fact. I think, and I don't know. Who knows? I don't know that cell phones will ever get to the point where they can take as good of a landscape image, for example, as like somebody like Ryan Dyer or some of these guys that I'm just blown away by their work. I don't know that it'll ever get to that point, right? But for somebody that wants to share what they saw, I mean, it's going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of the world we live in, right? I mean, let's just be honest. We all scroll through Instagram and we're like, oh, did it, and scroll. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's reality, right? That's what social media has trained us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I'm blown away when somebody actually wants to buy a print from me anymore, to be honest. Somebody wants to put something that I took a photo of on their wall. It's like, cool, and I'm honored, but it's like most people don't even think that way anymore. They got so many photos they can look at on their phone every day, then that's good enough for them, I mean, so, but. I don't know. It's a different world.
Well, what I loved about my camera on that trip too is just, the speed, the rate at which I could take pictures. I could zoom out. There was a turtle that kept washing up into the water, and it was just, you had to be ready.
Right.
And I couldn't do that with my phone, and so
Right.
I had this camera, and you could just be clicking like crazy and capture those moments, or zooming out there to see someone in my family out there snorkeling. And so
See, you can't zoom on a
Well,
cell phone camera,
Not
they're crap.
digitally, and it looks like garbage. Yeah.
Yeah.
do you video at all, or mostly stills?
If I want to make money at this thing, right, I really need to start doing more. I do video some. I've got a ton of video clips from elk rut and behavior and sheep rut and behavior and all kinds of stuff that I've got in my files that I've never done anything with. I tease my son. My boy used to come along with me a lot in video, and I kind of was like, man, I need to give you, you're the whiz at that stuff. I don't know that I want to take the time to learn how to edit video, because it's just like another thing that's going to suck my time,
Yeah.
But anyways, I was trying to get him to say, hey, I'm going to give you a bunch of these elk clips. Be creative, man. Create me some cool video that I can put on a reel or something, and he hasn't done it, but yeah, I do some video, and there's definitely that's where everything's headed. But I think I'm always going to be a photographer at heart.
Yeah.
And even if I'm only doing it for me, and nobody wants anything to do with it anymore, there's something about, and I was going to make this connection, there's something about capturing that image, that precise moment where everything's just perfect, and when you've got it when you're in the field, there's almost like that same feeling, that sense of accomplishment that you get when you connect with an animal when you're hunting.
Yeah.
It's not the same. That's not fair, because it's like, come on, let's be real. I didn't take an animal's life or anything. There's a different reference associated with that, after the kill's done. But as far as what this does for a photographer, you get that same kind of adrenaline rush, that same kind of, and the cool thing about it is, if I'm lucky in an elk season, I might get that 4 or 5 times, where I really feel like I got an image that's like, wow, that's like the dragons are real morning, in the elk woods. And that morning was insane. I can't even, you just need to go listen to the podcast if you want to hear the story, but it is incredible what we experienced that morning, And a lot of it's just from a photography standpoint, understanding that those conditions don't happen very often, and the way light works and all that stuff, that's what a lot of it, from a photography standpoint, is what made it so special.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jason, I could ask questions all night.
We're going to let him go home so he can actually spend some time with his family.
I could go on and on. When I bought that camera, I bought it mainly for video. But like you said, depending on if you want to do stills or whatnot,
Right.
But that one's really been nice for the purpose,
right.
What I want it for. But as I've started looking a little bit more, and it's funny, like you said, I'm sitting there thinking last night, I've got my phone out, I'm like, okay, Nikon or Canon or Sony, which is,
right.
It's that game, like you said, when Chevy, Ford, whatever,
right.
And it's hard to say which way to go. But
it is. I think honestly right now the ones that are leading the pack are Canon and Sony. They're the ones that are, they've stepped out ahead.
Yeah.
As far as all that technology goes, but Nikon's staying in there. But
yeah,
I used to be a Nikon guy, and I switched recently, so that was a little painful. But.
Well, yeah, you get all those lenses, and then what do you do? Unless you have adapters, I guess.
Right now, I'll tell you what I do is they're sitting in my house waiting for somebody that's willing to pay me for them. So that's just the reality of it. But no, I could talk all night too, you guys. This has been awesome. I've enjoyed this 100%. It's like my wife knows. It's like you start talking photography, hunting, outdoors, whatever, and she starts shaking her head like, "Oh boy, we're gonna be here for a while." So
go find me a comfy chair.
Right.
Well, where can people find you if they want to try to find you?
If you want to find me, and again, I throw that out there. I may take some time to get back to you, but if anybody has any questions, I'm always willing to try to help. Like I mentioned, and I'll try to be as helpful as I can. But you can reach out to me on Instagram at Untamed Images by JL. It's just my initials, by Jason Loftus. And unfortunately, Untamed Images is already taken, and the person that has that account, that's a whole other story, is not active, hasn't been. I've reached out to him multiple times.
Oh, really?
Trying to get that, so I could just simplify.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's a story. So, Untamed Images by JL. It's the same on Facebook, just to keep it consistent. I have a website, the same, untamedimagesbyjl.com, where I have quite a bit of my work out there as well. But yeah, if you want to reach out or are interested in a print or want to come listen to the Wild and Exposed podcast, we'd love the support, and always love to have questions from listeners and fans, and
awesome.
Love to run into people in the field too. So if you see me out there running around with my camera, wait till I'm done shooting, but please come say hi.
Well, we talked about this earlier. I think one of the first times I had learned about you or saw you is Dave and I were down at the Hunt Expo in Utah about 2 years ago, and we were just we weren't doing a podcast or anything. We were just going through like everybody else, and I thought it was like the Onyx booth. Anyways, you were sitting there with Randy Newberg doing a podcast, and it's kind of what got Dave and I thinking, hey, this would be cool, if we did a podcast and we come down to the expo and talk to people. So you're partly to blame for what we're doing now.
Jeez.
Well, I'm glad. That's good, because this is cool.
No, we appreciate that. So, Jason, thanks for coming on the podcast with us, and I guess we'll wrap this one up.
Awesome.
All right, thanks.